gentlemen, welcome to the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors meeting for August 19th, 2019. I'll call the meeting to order. First item of business is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Jeff has moved and Santos has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. We'll now receive comments from the public. Anyone here wishing to address the board on a subject not already on our agenda? Seeing none, we'll move right along to number 4, the judicial branch update with 7th Judicial District Chief Judge Marlita Grieve and District Administrator Kathy Gaylord. Good morning.
Good morning, thank you. My name is Marlita Grieve and I am the Chief Judge here in the 7th Judicial District. I have Kathy Gaylord with us, who is our District Court Administrator for the entire district, and Heidi McDonough, who is our Clerk of Court for Muscatine County, which I think most of you have already met. I just wanted to be here and answer any questions for you on the judicial branch, but there are a few things I wanted to say first. I just had a chance to go over and look at the courthouse remodeling, and I'd like to compliment Mr. Nolan and his group because it's gorgeous. If you haven't had a chance to go through there, it's really a very nice job. They've matched the woodwork very well. I think the space is going to be very well used, and makes much more sense now to have the jury box on the right-hand side where the jury room is versus on the left where it was. So we're very excited for that to be finished at some point. And Muscatine's been very good as far as hosting our court when we need it outside of the courthouse for district court. But it really is quite a project and something that we're really excited about having at some point. Not all counties in the state treat the judicial branch as well as some of the counties in our district. The supervisors in our district have treated us because we are squatters in your building. Basically, we don't pay rent, but we do use the court system, and by code you're required to let us do that. But we do appreciate anything that you do in helping with that. The second thing is security. You also provide us very good security over at the courthouse. I know there's an armed bailiff there daily, whether there's a judge there or not, and it's very soothing to know that we have security in the courthouse. We did have a shooting several years ago in Jackson County in our district. Didn't involve the actual court system, involved the supervisors, unfortunately, and the man who was doing the shooting died. But we have to be much more aware, I think, of security nowadays, and just having an armed bailiff in the courthouse is that extra layer of protection. So we appreciate that you have done that as well. I did want to express our condolences to Neva Reddick Baker's family. She was a part-time magistrate and just passed away last week, kind of unexpectedly. She was just doing part-time magistrate work at this point in her career. So Judge Tom Rydell is our liaison judge for Muscatine, and he has now posted that position because by code we have to fill that position within 30 days of Neva's death. The meeting that they will have a commission meeting where people can apply and will be interviewed, I think it's on September 5th. And then the commission itself will actually choose that magistrate. Hopefully we can get him or her on board fairly quickly and take that spot. Muscatine a couple of years ago was given 3 magistrates. We used to only have 2, but now we have 3 based on the amount of work that's done here. You are the second busiest county in our district, second to Scott. So we definitely need to keep that coverage going if we can. I also did want to tell you that the Iowa Supreme Court is coming to Muscatine County for its what they call the Court on the Road, and it will be here on September 10th. The evening of September 10th, it will hear oral arguments on a case. I think it's a Lynn County case, but the arguments will be open to the public, and I think, is it the high school or is it?
One of the schools.
Yeah, one of the schools. I'm not sure what school it's at, but there'll be more publicity put out about that. But that evening is a very nice evening for people to have a chance to actually watch an appellate court argument. The justices are available both before and after so that the people can meet and talk with them. So I would encourage all of you, if you can, to come to that meeting. Judge Rydell's been working with Justice Waterman on the details of that. I think they're going to have a reception at some point for the court itself. But that's, it's a pretty nice thing for us to be able to get the court here in our district. And so September 10th is a date you might want to put on your calendar. Otherwise, I think right now we're fully staffed. We don't have any openings in Muscatine County, so we're happy about that. We could always use more staff, and we're always talking to the legislature about funding more staff, but until we get that done, I think we're going to be kind of at the level that we're at right now. Anybody have any questions for me, comments? All right, thank you very much for the opportunity. We like to come yearly just to let you know we're still here, and that we do appreciate you having us here, so thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Here we go. Thank you to Chief Judge Marlita Grieve. We'll move on to item number 5, public hearing on proposed plans, specifications, form of contract, and cost estimate for the Muscatine County General Services Maintenance Building Project. We got Mike Nolan with us. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning. Fix the screen here real quick.
Hey.
All right. Before we jump into the maintenance building, I apologize. There was one late item which I would like to address regarding the courthouse, which I distributed to you this morning. A change order request from Wolf Contracting, and I'll explain what this is about. So we originally did the design. This is the bench as it's installed right now. We went through designs with the court representatives and other members, and figuring out the heights of the different benches was something that we went through fairly in depth. So what you're looking at here is sitting from the recorder station looking across to the witness box. What we did was we brought that partition up an extra 6 inches. The judge's recorder came and took a look at that, and she had concern that she is maybe not as tall as I am, that she may have a challenge of being able to see the witness's mouth, and we're basically doing her duties across that. And even though it seemed like it was about the right height when we did the design, she was concerned that that was too high. So there was a request to see if we could lower that. We did conduct with the wood shop and also with Wolf Contracting. We can get this done now and stay on track, but essentially we need to get approval to get that work done today. With your approval, if this is something that you would like us to proceed with, we're going to take that top cap and essentially lower that down to just above the level of the front bar, which will then allow more or less at the same level the recorder in the seated position to look straight across to see a witness in the seated position as well. I asked Judge Rydell if this was something that was absolutely critical. I haven't received a note back on that, but it was definitely a very strong request. My concern would be, I mean, we did discuss this, so part of me feels like this was a condition that we did discuss, but the actual being in place may have been something that they didn't quite understand what the impact of that would be. So basically what we have is a request here to take the top cap off, remove that trim, cut the wall down, remove that, or basically replace that top cap about 6 inches shorter. And the total for that would be $2,226.40.
Just as an initial amount, I see this request came in on Friday. Nancy, how do we stand with being able to address this at all?
What I would suggest you do, if this is something that you guys are comfortable with, that you okay it by consensus today, and then I will put it on for actual formal action next week. And that way they can move ahead and we can still jump through our hoops.
And where are we to budget? We've got really just a couple of minor change orders on the project. I would assume we're
Still good with budget.
within our budget. Well, I would hate to go through the effort, and it's always unfortunate when these things happen, but I'd hate to go through the effort that we've gone through on that courtroom renovation and have a wall that's 6 inches too high to detract from its use.
My question is, how tall is that wall?
Currently that wall I think is just at 42 inches. I'd have to go and look.
And the front piece then would be
The front piece
36?
is, I apologize for not having the number straight off. I think it's around 30, the desktop is going to be at 30 inches. So I think the front wall was at 36 inches, and then the wall between was at 42 inches.
And this is as it currently will be, if we made no changes, this is how it would look going forward, correct?
That's correct.
What do you know what the height was prior to our renovation?
trying to recall, the witness box was on the other side, and the witness box was also elevated. They were both elevated. I feel like there was a partition, a height between them. I have to go back and review the basically pre-construction photos to see, but I feel like there was a partition between the two.
So who added the height? I mean, this is 6 inches higher than it was?
This is, I can't say for certain what it was relatively before, without going back and reviewing the prior photographs before the project. I feel like there was some separation between there so that the recorder and the witness weren't sitting directly across from each other, to have a little bit of separation. In our conversations, we asked, did we want to have a little more height there just to have a little bit of, privacy for the recorder, and that was requested. I think the concern was sitting there with one person in a seat, another person in a seat, looking across. She was concerned that for her function, she was not going to be able to maybe see a witness, and maybe it would also be of, not as tall or sitting up as high in the seat.
So to me, this seems like a perfect example of one of those things where the people who are gonna be using it have some interest in it, and given that we went through a detailed process, it makes sense to ask them to kick in something toward the change. Have we made any attempt to do that?
So basically, we had the request, what came across Thursday. We asked Wolf to put together the change order, which came in Friday, so we went through the process as expeditiously as we could on that part. I did push this back over to Judge Rydell over the weekend and said, this is what the cost is gonna be. Is it something that we could address with potentially with a seat height adjustment? And I haven't heard back from him as of yet on that, so.
And it sounds like they're ready to put flooring in, right? And
From a
that's
schedule
the dilemma,
standpoint,
You gotta cut that out and rework it, and they don't wanna do that after it cause problems, they'd have to clean floor again.
I understand your concerns, and I share those in some respect. Again, I'm in the capacity of passing along the request that was made. My concern would be that if this was a legitimate functional issue, then I feel like we'd be remiss if we ignored it, or at least didn't pass the request along to you at this point. It just did, and as Jeff said, a time frame we're looking to get done really by the end of next week, so things are coming along pretty smoothly. But if this was work that was gonna be accomplished, we wanna get that done this week, hence the kind of pushing it forward today.
And for the kind of the nerds in the room, the average adult seated eyes are right around 48 inches off the floor. So 42 inch would give you typically 6 inches, but not everybody's average.
Well, and that was my point, in that, if you end up with a witness that is of shorter stature, I can see where this possibly cause a little bit of discomfort.
I have no doubt that functionally it's a much better arrangement to have that lower. Again, my frustration is just the fact that we went through an in-depth process. We find out about this at the 11th and a half hour. I don't like this pattern. And I'd like to see the folks who played a role in helping us arrive at these dimensions take some responsibility for having helped us arrive at these dimensions. And I feel frustrated because I don't feel like they've been asked. Maybe they have, maybe I'm not hearing that correctly in what you're saying. I have no illusion that anybody's gonna wanna come around after the fact and say, oh, by the way, thanks for changing that, here's $1,100. But I'm frustrated once again at the process.
Understood. We did have a fairly in-depth design process that had participation from both the county and state representatives going through. We did review the overall geometry of the judge's bench in this whole area in some depth.
And that height was what they requested. That was discussed at a number of the meetings, and that for security purposes and privacy purposes, that was the height that was agreed
But it was all probably on paper.
on.
Sure.
We never really had a mock-up of the space.
Understand that you
which-
are always gonna be making changes at the end, but who's got skin in the game besides the county? Who besides the county taxpayers are we asking to deal with other people's decisions? I don't think that's fair to the taxpayer.
Well, I agree with you, Nathan, 100%, but I also, don't feel it's fair to the taxpayer, in that environment to, in certain situations, to have a court reporter struggle to make sure that things are correct. You know, yeah, it's a couple $1,000, I understand that. You know, if we can give somebody who should be in half or something, that's great. But I, for one, these things happen in construction situations, happens all the time. And I certainly wouldn't be in favor of leaving it be and for how many years going forward, saying, boy, I sure wish we could fix that.
But is that the true dichotomy here? Is that our only option?
Again, the request that I pushed forward was, is this something that we could adjust by basically maybe having a little bit taller seat or moving the seat up a little bit? Again, I understand that the recorder is in a, my understanding of their
The
position.
reporter having to stretch his or her neck, or be in an inconvenient situation. When, to the best of your knowledge, would the revisionary work take place?
This would happen as soon as we give the go-ahead. I would give a call to Wolf Construction, have them get working on it. We want to get this done. We're scheduled to have flooring go in closer to the end of this week, so we want to have this work done before we get flooring installed.
So the other question I have is, Nancy, your suggestion of working around the addition, or it's not even really an addition to the agenda, but the late presentation of the issue, is to give a de facto consensus and then ratify it later.
Yeah.
Is that legit? I mean, essentially, we're basically making an action decision that's not on our agenda.
The other thing that you could do is call this an emergency item and go ahead and vote on it
I'd be
today.
more comfortable.
I mean, you have the ability to do that as
Is
well.
that a chair designation or is that a board designation?
I believe it can go either way, so,
Well, then I would take the liberty of designating it an emergency item, given the lateness with which we received the request, and ask for a formal vote on it.
I'll second that.
Well, I can't make the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. Do you need a motion on the, making it an emergency item, Nancy, or do we
no,
just?
the chair's just designating that, so.
Okay. So then I'll make a motion, we approve the change order.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jeff has moved, Scott has seconded. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
I vote nay. Motion passes. Okay, maintenance building.
All right, thank you very much. All right. Okay, so maintenance, what I'd like to do is just talk through what we have for the plans briefly. To make sure we're all understanding of what is it that we're asking for today, and then we'll talk through the overall project costs, and then we'll talk about the actual part that we're going to release for bid for general contract, and I'll explain how there's a little bit of difference in that. Basically, it comes down to things that we will handle as a county and not necessarily pay a general contractor to do, and then there's the work that we'll do, which is basically the building portion of the work. So, new general services building on the corner of Walnut and Fifth Street. This is the site plan that we went through, site plan review with the city, and for our last conversation, honoring the previous agreement that we had with the city to provide 20 parking spots on the property. What we agreed with the city is that these 20 new parking spots, street parking along Walnut, which you can see, and I will try and get out my little scratch pointer here. So basically from here down to here, those parking spots along Walnut Street we would construct, and then those would be turned over to the city. I did have preliminary conversations with the city manager about the city picking up part of the cost or any of the cost for that, and I did not receive favorable feedback in that respect. So it's something we can certainly continue to have the conversation with. There didn't seem to be a whole lot of these forthcoming funds from the city's part at this point, so it may be a conversation we need to happen at a higher level than me. The request was made, and at this point, there is not.
Thank you for making that request, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So we will get 20 parking spaces along the city. Those parking spaces will be dedicated to the city as part of right-of-way. The city will then own the maintenance, the upkeep, and essentially all that. Probably we need to do some portion of redrawing of the boundaries or however the right-of-way goes, so we'll work through that process internally. Essentially that will get the city will then be off of the property, and everything remaining on the lot will be county property with no other agreements in place. These spaces that you see along the south portion here, you'll see those broken out as those are spaces that are not required for the building, but thinking forward to what may happen with the museum in the future, we do have a line item in to do those parking spaces. The recommendation would be to do all this work at one time, basically get the paving and the work done all in one piece here. For the building itself, you can see we're now pushed up tight as we can be to Walnut Street and to Fifth Street, which is I think is a good location and good orientation for the, overall for the building. The city is going to, obviously, if we have the parking spots that are going along the east side of Walnut, there won't be any street parking there. The other thing we've asked is that a hold back about 10 feet off the corner in those locations, and that's going to give us ample room to move any vehicles that we have in or out of the space here. Primary flow on and off the site is going to be basically in through the alley to this side of the bay and then back out the alley with ample room to turn either north or south onto Walnut. And we do have one pull-through bay that goes through the maintenance coming, can we see that, from Fifth Street through maintenance, so that will give use for the general services has a longer trailer, which they'll be using a little more regularly. The apron out to the south side of the building is amply sized to be able to get a large vehicle in there with a trailer to get turned around and get back into the spot. So we feel like we're in a very good spot with the clearances overall. We do have a few parking spots on site just to the south of the building, including an accessible parking spot, which will be available for building maintenance. We have a few vehicles that they have, sedans and things like that, and then also for staff parking.
Mike, a slightly unrelated, well, tangentially related at least, question I had. I was speaking with some staff at the courthouse last week, and they were expressing concerns about the adequacy of the geothermal and the cooling system there. It was a little toasty when we were in there. And they were telling me that it was explained to them that there's either enough air conditioning to adequately cool the jail or the courthouse, but not necessarily both. Does that ring true?
Touching a little bit of the third rail there, so that's a question that we're pursuing right now. So Oscar has asked me to start to look into that over the last year and a half, studying the jail, studying the courthouse, and studying basically the conditioning. When we did have the heat wave that went through recently, particularly with those record-setting temperatures, is that we were doing on, or the county maintenance was on the evenings and weekends was shutting off the courthouse to give additional capacity over to the jail. We have looked at the jail, the control system, some of the infrastructure on that, and we're addressing that right now. One of the issues we've addressed there is that the controls for what's called a multi-stack, basically the blending unit or overheating. So we're adding additional cooling into that space. Hopefully that will help out with the controls, and that may help with some of the conditioning. We need to, or we're looking at, probably the next step is going to be an overall, basically a capacity study for the current geo field to see what that system is. Oscar and I have talked about, and Sherry, we have conversations of how do we do that? Can we add some cooling capacity onto either pre-cool the water coming back from the geo loop before it goes back into the field and the wells, or do we need to potentially look at some point in the future of maybe putting one of the buildings on a separate system again? Those are all options that are up in the air. I don't have a great answer for that, but it's something that we are exploring at this time, understanding it's an ongoing issue.
Does it make sense to include any of that planning in the construction of this maintenance building?
I don't see that there's anything critical as far as this that would not necessarily be related, and we have talked a little bit about that. Some of the options we've discussed could be to add either a cooling tower, which would take basically the loops that are coming back, just so, I'll put a quick box around here so everybody understands the geo field is underneath the green space, underneath the parking lot for the courthouse right now. The primary exchange is inside of the historic jail. So the option would be is you have basically water is pumped through, or coolant is pumped into the geofield, goes back out, and then it's distributed to the jail, distributed to the courthouse, distributed to the administration building, and distributed to the attorney's office. So those are the buildings that are getting served by that. What we could do is if we're having capacity, essentially if I'm exchanging heat, if I have a capacity issue, I could take the return that's going it back into the field, and what we discussed is potentially somewhere over here putting in like a cooling tower to pre-cool that water. The other option would be, and again, without doing a full understanding of what's going on with the capacity, the other option would be potentially to take the jail and put that back on a separate cooling and heating system. So again, there's a lot of what ifs out there, and it's a question we've been kind of chasing down for about a year and a half. So we're taking an incremental approach to it. The big challenge there, understanding, is that the jail is a 24-hour a day, 7 days a week, mission critical facility. So not being cool enough or not being warm enough is not really an option. So,
Sherry and Mike, I think at one point we talked about the green space beside the old historic jail and utilizing that as an expansion of the fields. We never moved forward with that, or did we ever look at that, or is that an option to
The
expand?
foundation of the old sheriff's quarters is still present there. You took it down, I think, 3 foot below grade, the foundation down and left.
They can probably drill through that, can't they? We know it's there, so we don't know what else is under there is always the challenge, but we've never done any exploratory wells or anything there to see if it's suitable, because as I recall, that was when we talked about the load we were putting on that well field a number of years ago. Vic had always said that was kind of a backup area. We have that green space that we could possibly put more wells in. But we have some other issues in there too, right? We've got some feed lines coming across that are rather shallow, going
Well,
over.
and part of that green space is being used for parking spaces now too.
Right,
so
okay.
that'll shrink that green space.
And none of our systems feed the public safety building as a city, correct? It's all separate, yeah. Okay.
It's definitely something we're aware of, and it's a part of the longer-term process, something that we're studying. So again, the goal will be to go to the least expensive intervention to see if that helps correct the problem and then work our way up. But I would say that we're at the point where we really need to do an overall a load study with all the facilities and an understanding with the geo. I think some of the, just from a layperson standpoint, quasi is that there's annual demand and then there's peak load requirements. So we're probably fine on annual demand, but the understanding is that when you look at that from a mechanical engineer's perspective, that they're given with annual demand to meet that load, you have a certain number of overheating days that are okay, which is fine until you're in that percentage of overheating days and then you're not comfortable. So particularly with the jail being hooked onto this and not having the, we'll call recoup time on that, you're always having load in that facility. It's a very complex system, particularly as we've added on over the years, something that was initially designed to, to heat 1 or 2 buildings, and now it's kind of expanded out to the entire campus. That's something that I have it on my engineers' plates to start to look at. They said, let us get through this first, and then we'll look at that. But I'll be back here probably in a couple weeks to maybe give you some options or pathways forward to start to really start to understand that issue. To answer the question, I don't see anything that we would necessarily need to add with this building that would be critical one way or the other. I think that this would be probably a separate system, more or less tied to what we have with the geo system in the historic jail versus something that would be part of the new building.
So how would you be heating this one?
So this building is going to be on a separate, so the conditioning system is we have radiant floor with a boiler for this building specifically, and then we have air conditioning provided by basically a air-to-air mini split system onto the office side. We will also offer heating, but the primary heating for this building is going to be via radiant floor slabs.
Well, and we had issues with the cooling at the courthouse due to the project going on, that were repaired or adjusted, I believe, so, that wasn't necessarily due to the use of the system. We had something that because they disconnected half of the building to work on it, there was some adjustment or fix that needed to be made that was made by the contractor late Thursday, and Oscar said that all appeared to be working now, so.
Again, we're kind of gathering data points. We have a lot of moving pieces, so as we start to get some of these things settled out, we are adding cooling capacity in the courtroom, so that once we get that settled in, the system's kind of back to a stasis level where we can see where it's working without being modified. Probably be a better position to understand exactly what we need to do for the future.
And with the expansion we've had in that system, it makes sense to me to look at it anyway, just to understand where we are.
And we did have, as part of the facility master plan, we studied the overall function of the system, and at that point, just from the overall architecture of the system itself, we didn't find anything that appeared to be of an issue, and that was basically given a green light by the engineers who did that portion of the study. But when we asked a question about would we look at load, they said no, we explicitly excluded a load study from that part, just from the complexity of it. So that would be the next to move on to. Dynamic systems modeling is fun stuff.
Just to note too, Mike, one of the things that the public safety building a couple years back had issues with the same loading with a geothermal that they have. And they went in and did a study because they were on peak loading and it wasn't doing enough, and had a lot of complaints from the firefighter group on heat and whatnot. So they went in and added air conditioning units, basically overhead type system on it. And I think there's still some issues there too. So prior to maybe do some small legwork if you can, finding out what they put in, see if there was success with it, how that worked, because basically they just added on a system with the current geothermal as well too, before we go into seeing what we can cut back. So if we can make anything better, that would be definitely something to look at when you do your study.
Absolutely, and I think that's some of the, we want to spend the time to study and understand what's going on. Obviously not ad absurdum, but if there's, because you can say this room is warm, let's add an air conditioner in here. I add an air conditioner, the thermostat in the hallway says, hey, it's cool here, and then maybe kicks the geothermal system off. So that's a little bit of a challenge when you start to get multiple systems trying to work and fighting against each other. So the goal would be more or less to stay within, one overall coherent system. And a little bit of the challenge with the jail particularly is it has a system that's designed specifically to take heat from one space where you don't want it, add it to a space where you don't, and vice versa. So again, it's complex stuff that's going on, but it is something we want to definitely continue to chase down and get that sorted out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so that's basically location. So any other questions or comments at this point on the siting or the location?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you a question, maybe an answer, maybe not. I'm always frustrated every week when I drive in and I see contractors, and I'm assuming the city's allowing that, parked in the alley on the end of our parking lot. Have we approached the city about vacating that alley, that whole alley through our property? Since we're doing this cleanup and all that, I'm assuming it has not been vacated through there?
I think it has been, hasn't it? It's closed off at Mulberry, it doesn't go all the way through.
I know there's no method of egress out there, but I'm trying to understand why they're always parking at the end of our parking lot, making it difficult for us to navigate and plow
What we
snow.
run into is contractors who don't necessarily ask permission of the city, they park there because they believe that's city property and they're doing work for the city, so that's just a case. I mean, we certainly could reach out to them.
I would wanna see if that's been vacated, and if not, we ought to, as a part of this process, make sure that all is vacated so that we can control it.
Okay. We'll put this back for final site plan review, so I'll ask them if they will annotate that, just their understanding that this is gonna be the condition in the future, is that we did discuss that we plan to shut that off and is make that more or less a pedestrian pathway through when we complete the renovation work on the jail. So this is the spot I assume you're talking about here, so cutting
I'm
that.
talking about the whole, I believe that's an alley, that whole alleyway from Mulberry to Walnut,
So
or.
this is
There's
closed.
a concrete block or two right there.
There's no access there.
Other than that.
There's no access, but I believe it's an alley, cause there's utilities in there and all kinds of stuff, and I'd want them to vacate that easement. I don't care about the utilities being in there, but I just don't want them to use it like an alley.
Okay, I will ask that question. I feel that we had an understanding in principle, but it's good to get things written down.
Yeah, we find out how those are working for us lately,
Yeah,
right?
those only matter if you have principles.
I'd rather have it documented.
Another option we could look at is potentially, I think we talked about this, if we had installed a curb along the backside of the parking lot there, and maybe that's something that we would look at as a phase two, or when we get to the jail portion of that, but then to not have the ease of being able to go right off of the blacktop onto the grass, would probably limit the temptation perhaps to park back there, and that's something we can look at.
One of the, well, it's just, that whole corner bothers me. I'd love to clean that up if we're gonna put a nice building in there, and, so I don't know how maintainable that is on the field, so, I don't know where we are on dollars we'd allocated budget-wise for this year and where everything's coming in, but I would love to see, giving our maintenance staff the ability, maybe a sprinkler system, something out there, so that we can maintain that lot a little nicer, that vacant lot, and have it, it's kind of a gateway into the downtown and into our area, our complex, and I like a good professional feel when they come visit.
And Oscar made the suggestion, or after his research, I determined that an irrigation system on that lot may help with the cooling of the geofuel.
Yeah, and I don't know condition of sidewalks around there and all of that, but this is the time to look at all that if you're going in there and doing a major construction project, cause it appears from some of the new stuff I was reading this weekend that we gotta do some digging, we got some underground work to do and all kinds of stuff, so this is the time to look at all that and make sure that we've got it set up, okay?
Yeah, we can certainly expand out the overall block analysis, and if that's something, whether it's part of this project or maybe something that just gets added on at the same time, something we can certainly look at as we go.
Mike, how many parking spots are we gonna actually have, and how many are we giving to the county? Can you show me which ones those are?
So these parking lots, the only parking spots that are going to the city are going to be the ones that are along Walnut, and all of the parking spots that we're building along Walnut are gonna go to the city. So there are 20 parking spots, there's straight in pull-in parking here along Walnut. Oop, sorry.
So we're we're basically giving them 20, and what are we getting?
So in our spots, you can see here is we have 4 plus a handicap adjacent to the building. And then we have 8 total parking spots for straight-in parking that would be along the alley.
How many vehicles does the maintenance, we've got a few, right?
They have 3, right? The pickup and the two vehicles that are passed down from the sheriff's office for the custodians to use to drive.
And I'm kind of switching subjects here a little bit, but other county staff vehicles, I see on the weekends and I drive by, I think assessor's got some cars there, community services got some cars there. How many of those vehicles do we have? And, you know, I like a home for everything. You know, is it something we should consider putting parking for assigned vehicles somewhere? Because, you know, I think that other lot gets plenty of use, and which I'm tickled for. I see the courts using it, I see visitors to the courts, so I think that's a great thing. But it gets pretty crowded. I don't know if there's an opportunity along the other side of that maintenance facility to pop in another 4 or 5 parking spaces for
That's what I'm
those,
thinking about.
for those staff vehicles that we know are always here. We got,
Yeah.
what, 2 general services trucks?
1.
1? And you've got, I don't know how many vehicles the assessor has,
Assessor has 2,
2? And then-
community services has 1, DHS, I believe they have 2 or 3.
And there may be some discussion with the new community services director that those vehicles are here.
Yeah.
Parking lot. Because they were here because there was a discussion that there wouldn't be enough parking for staff up there, but from what we've seen, they're usually open spots, that it's possible that it might be more convenient for them to have their cars at their building.
Our staff to parking ratio at community services is pretty tight, right?
Right, but with the DHS staff, you have, they're not in the office a lot of the time, so people are coming and going. Anytime I've gone up there, there are 4 or 5 at least empty parking spaces, so, and with the DHS body count spaces, those were the people that were Muscatine part-time too, so.
Have we ever approached
So I
this,
don't know.
have we ever approached the city on those, I'm gonna call it the L that surrounds community services, with them putting like 1 hour parking and free? I mean, it always strikes me crazy that you have
They were not
a
interested in that.
DHS facility and then you're putting paid parking out there. You have people that really don't need that challenge in their life. Do we really get that much revenue off those dozen spaces? I drive by them all the time, they seem empty.
That was discussed.
Okay.
It was, when we moved DHS downtown, that request was made, and they were not interested in making a change.
So
Maybe we should move our 20 lots down on Washington Street then. Our 20 parking spaces for them.
right now, I
It
think,
doesn't seem
so
too interested in
again,
doing a lot of things.
right now, Mike, I was just wanting to see if that's something that we could evaluate and seeing if I think there's value in it. I think it would be something that we would want. And then if there's gonna be access to is there gonna be a sidewalk that runs back this way, or how would we, if there was gonna be maybe the assessors, or if there was gonna be people utilizing that and eventually coming back to maybe the county building or the courthouse?
So are we talking adding those parking spaces on the green space?
Yeah, I'm just asking, you know.
Yeah.
We could certainly study that. My question would be, are we gonna be impeding the operation of being able to get vehicles in and out of that space, potentially parking cars over there? 'Cause right now, that's, kind of set aside for turn radius and turn space to get the larger vehicles and trailers turned around into the space.
And the search and rescue vehicles in and out?
Okay.
What if you, go ahead. I would say, what if you curb cut parking out of, Fifth Street into the green space?
That would be another question for the city. They were, seemed hesitant at one point. They did ask if they could have some spaces over there. I kind of pushed back on that. just based off of the idea being that I don't want to eat up the green space too much. One is impeding access to the geofields you would need to get in to maintain it.
Well, I'm not talking for I mean, if we need extra spaces for the county folks. Right now, I'm not super impressed with the city.
Well, that's something we can add on later, I guess. I was just my question was just if there was already value in having the spaces and then making sure that because once we start getting more maintenance vehicle, we start getting more staff there. It seems like those parking spots might end up getting used up quite a bit, but I think we can look at it afterwards.
We just have the will to police it.
Yeah. My other question is right where you're having the main entrance coming out and in and out on Walnut right there. Down below, further down, right there, yeah, right there. That's gonna be where basically you're saying the most amount of traffic would be, correct?
In what respect?
As far as entrance and exits from
It's
vehicles.
probably gonna be the most activity for the building, yes.
But that's also gonna be the same entrance for the police as well, or for the city?
No,
The city shouldn't need to come in.
the city, these parking spots are not city parking spots, those are
Okay,
county parking spots.
so how will they be coming into their parking spots, I guess is what I was asking.
They will pull straight off of Walnut, these will be pulled straight in.
Ah, okay, so there's no curve, no, okay.
This is similar, I think they added straight in parking spaces with the new come and go, so this is a similar model to what they did there.
Mike, is there any value, the city seems to like back in spots.
Stop it. Moving forward.
You digress.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Which beer would you like me to poke, sir?
So, I had a question on your overall budget here that you've done, if that's, we can still go over that, right?
Absolutely, can we, before we jump to the budget, can I just walk through the plans real quick?
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
Okay, so any other questions on the site plan? Yes, sir.
Previously, when we talked about this, we talked about the door openings, and they were 10 by 10. We had a discussion in regard to getting those doors larger to at least 12-foot wide doors, and I see we're at 10 by 10 still. Is that?
That's it, I was wondering where that came from. That's probably a typo on the budget line. There are 12 by 12 doors on the
12 by
plans.
12?
Yes, sir. All
Okay.
doors are 12 by 12, so if I didn't get that, I'll make that correction onto the budget.
Very good.
Yeah, the plans and specifications all call for 12-foot doors. I try and have things linked as smartly as I can, but a spreadsheet is only as smart as the operator, unfortunately.
Very good.
Okay.
With that,
What's the total square footage of this building, Mike? It's a 60 by 100, is that right?
We have 6,000 square feet on the lower level with about 1,200 square feet of storage in the mezzanine, so a total of 7,200 square feet.
Okay.
I'm just gonna quickly walk through just to talk about the specification of the building, and then we can jump back and I'll run through the budget a little more in depth. Okay, so doing that. So you see in the plans and specifications, so the building, again, this is laid out with, we have Walnut Street plan left and then Fifth Street to plan right. The primary entrance of the building, which you saw on the site plan, will be here. There will be a access ramp that runs the side of the building and enters onto a porch this direction, and then we'll have a few steps up in this direction with a little bit of screening on the porch just to add some visual interest and also add a little bit of privacy for the maintenance staff. The overall layout of the space is we're going to have an employee common area, which is going to have some tables with power and data access, probably a drawers for basically personal or pencils, things like that that they need. Also have a small kitchenette, but this will be kind of the central gathering space, morning meetings, things along that line. We have a small locker room, essentially a place for employees to put their personal items during the day, and it's curable and out of the public circulation. We have one office for the maintenance supervisor. The supply closet, which will be accessed off of a short corridor, and that's going to be for housekeeping supplies. Also have a washer and dryer in there, which they use for washing cleaning rags, things along that line. General support of the maintenance and the custodial staff. We have 2 restrooms that can be unisex, they can be designated as male, female with a shower full accessible for the maintenance staff. Those will be accessed off of the garage and then more or less curable from this hallway for people that are working on work release can then access the garage, go use the restrooms without having to access the full office side of the facility.
Are those showers handicap accessible?
Yes, they are.
Wow,
Yep, 36 by 36 with the appropriate clearances.
that's tight. But yeah, that's the standard.
It works. To the rear of the building, we're gonna have a staff entrance, so basically from the parking lot, we'll have a small airlock for them that will then access into the main portion of the bay. And then off of the maintenance bay, we'll have a tool and work area, which will have a welding station with a dedicated hood. We'll have a woodworking area with dedicated dust collection, and then also a securable tool crib to the back. And that space will open onto the general service maintenance garage, so 2 bays, they were approximately 30 feet by 60 feet. Yep, about 1,800 square feet, give or take. And then we have a stairs that you see on the left side that go up to a mezzanine above. For the search and rescue storage side, you can see that we have an entrance off of 5th Street. We have again, same restroom, so a fully accessible restroom with shower. And then we have stair access to a storage mezzanine on the search and rescue side as well. General finishes I'll talk through. We're going to do a polished concrete in the office spaces. Elsewhere it's going to be a sealed concrete with the radiant floor underneath. The finishes on the walls and the maintenance side, we'll do a vinyl wall base with a painted gypsum wallboard with drop ceilings above. General construction is going to be wood frame with some steel for basically for additional structure where required. We'll have trusses over top of the office side, which will have a blown-in insulation in the attic. All the walls are specified with an open cell spray foam. And then on the tool crib, starting basically in the tool crib, that work area and then into the maintenance bays, all the walls and the ceilings will be a steel liner panel finish. So again, going for durability and for resilience. In the bathrooms, we'll do a tile wainscot just around that, again, for cleanability and sanitation purposes.
Mike, the mezzanines, are they partial mezzanines?
Yes, we pop to the next page here. So this is the general location of the mezzanine. So on the general services side, we do a double high bay there, and basically to incorporate the 12-foot door to have that pull through. So they have on that side, you see stairs come up from below. Let me get my little pointer out here. And then we have up here, there's a mechanical room on that mezzanine, which is going to have the boiler and then also a dedicated compressor. So we'll have hard piped air running through the building as required. And then they'll have storage in the remainder of that. On the search and rescue side, they have a mezzanine, which is approximately 800 square feet that runs the full width and about 20 feet deep. So plenty of room for storage of smaller items and equipment. The roof of the building is planned to be, I should pop forward here to the overall, to the exterior. So you have some samples in front of you. All the doors, 12 by 12 overhead doors, insulated steel construction. The wainscot or the base of the walls is going to be a split-faced concrete masonry unit, which is going to be a little bit darker gray. The walls above we have spec'd as a fiber cement rain screen product with basically a linear orientation, so it should have a nice look, but just kind of going from a darker base up to a lighter top. And then the roofs are going to be a standing seam steel with a darker gray finish on that. So the goal was to try and blend in with the buildings that are around. We have kind of the tan limestone for the courthouse. We have the red brick for the other buildings. We wanted to keep in the same material palette more or less. We looked at trying to go closer to the courthouse and didn't find anything we thought would be a very good match. So we thought we'd do something complementary. We did have a very scientific. We took the samples and put them up against the wall to make those look. So you'll see the piece of the fiber cement that's being passed around. That's blue. That's not the color, but that's the material that we'll be using for that product. And that the lightest gray has kind of been on a tab is what the field color of the walls will look like. The windows will be aluminum store frame and a mill finish most likely as we go through. So that's big picture what we're looking at overall for the building construction without going too far into depth. I do have a couple of images to share with you of what this will most likely look like. So this is looking from the corner of, I'm looking down Walnut and standing along 5th Street or across the street. You see that it's, again, just looking for something that's going to be timeless, durable, nice look for the county here. It's a maintenance bay, and we are seeing foundations there, so it didn't do the site. Again, the front porch is, we're gonna use a kind of a corrugated perforated aluminum product, something that'll add a little interest, but you can still see through, put the building signage on there, and again, trying to be a good example of the county and anchor that corner. And from the parking lot side, so now looking up Walnut towards the back, you see the employee entrance, the bay doors. Overall, the massing, I'm pretty happy. I think with moving the building around, I think it made a big difference. It's gonna be a nice look overall. So we have a nice presentation along Fifth Street, which is primary, and then really the business side, which is the back of the building, is gonna be appropriately located towards the interior of the lot.
Mike, there was some talk, I would say a few months ago, about possibly pursuing some kind of an environmental designation on this building. Has that gone anywhere?
I think we've looked and see if there's any money available for that, and at this point, we haven't really found any programs that are gonna kick in on that. So again, the building is gonna be more or less designed to what would be a LEED Silver standard at a very minimum. So we are very highly insulated, we have a very efficient heating and cooling system on the building. We're using, we're heating with fiber cement, it's a good durable recyclable material. But we haven't found anything that would necessarily, I'd say, it's good use of taxpayer dollars to pursue a designation per se.
Well, the plan
So
is to have it wired that if we would want to add solar panels in the future, that it would be ready for that.
If we pursued like a LEED certification, there's a cost to that, correct? We're designing it to a silver standard, but I don't know if there's an
It is
investment value in
cost
getting that
effective.
certification.
I'm more worried about the functionality than the
Yeah.
officialness of it.
I agree.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, what I want to talk through you first is a two-page budget you have here, and what you see is there's a two-page and a single page. The two pages kind of go in depth, more or less what I would like the county, or suggest the county have for your budget. And the second is what we release with the public bidding documents for the general, basically the general contractor to bid. This will be bid in a single general contractor for the work that's gonna be designated, with the exception we'll talk about here, was furniture and equipment, and I'll show you exactly where those lines come out here. So generally, you have broken out here general conditions, which is a temporary utilities, equipment rental, mobilization, temporary fencing, things along that line. It's kind of the first block there, and that's around $70,000. For the building shell, and I will say on the note on this is where there's portions that are architectural, going to use RS means and square footage takeoffs to the best extent possible to get total cost. Where that wasn't available, and that would go directly to manufacturers or to historic data to find out some square foot costs. The engineers, they prepared their estimates, and they used it very similar where they first went to previous projects they had that were recent, then to national cost data for all of theirs. So you'll see lines where we lumped in, for example, on structure, that's a structural engineer's estimate, and that includes essentially all of the external walls, the sheathing, everything that's designated in there, anything that's broken out separately were the fancy things that I put onto the walls there. But for the building shell, we're including the structure, weatherproofing, insulation, all the exterior finishes, any sort of accents, the windows, the doors. This is essentially just the shell of the building as it says there. You can see the total we're coming in for that is around $510,000, their estimate. For the interior finishes, again, kind of a breakout of what we talked about, and this is going to include everything that goes into the interior with the exception of things that aren't nailed down. The one thing I do have in here we could pull out is we like to get a new refrigerator for the space. You pop over to page 2, essentially through all of that, you see that the interior fit out of the building for the finishes is around $115,000. For the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing and technology, the electrical, we have about $100,000. And a note with this is a change that we had published in the public bid, is we did have a late input from the county IT staff, and what they requested was we had planned to connect to MPW for internet. The request was to run fiber all the way back from this building into the county, into this administration building. And the rationale for that was if we went to MPW, we were going to have to make another connection, pay another internet service, establish a firewall. After talking with Bill, they said this is going to be better if we can just trench back, essentially get to the historic jail, get fiber in there, and they can pull back basically through tunnels all the way across here to get that ended back. So that did add some cost. We've explored a couple other options. This seems to be the best, the most reliable without resorting to wireless or something along that line. So you will see a slight increase for what was posted for public comment. For the mechanical, so that's plumbing and fixtures, that's going to include the radiant, the boiler, all the bathrooms, everything beyond that. Again, in the office side, we'll have the air source heat pump for mini splits, and then we'll have an energy recovery ventilator to make up our fresh air requirements. The next line, the furniture and equipment, furnishing and equipment, these are things we want to have in the overall budget, but won't be part of the general contractor's budget. So these are things that Sherry and I will coordinate, and we'll come back with the cost of these things individually, a little like we did with the courthouse and the furniture. There's no point in paying a general contractor markup to order furniture. We can do that and sort that piece out. So we have worked into this. Is there's an equipment hoist, which will be, we'll call it owner's furnished, contractor installed. So that's going to be basically a 1,000-pound capacity hoist on the maintenance side to lift up lawnmowers, seasonal equipment up and down onto the mezzanine. Again, we don't want people carrying that stuff up the stairs, but there will be a hoist beam installed for that. So that would be something that we will provide to the contractor for installation. Some miscellaneous shop tools and equipment. This is going to be the welding hood, the dust collection, some benches and things along that line. Again, we have about $25,000 plugged in, more or less, for that.
Does that include like your air, your whole, you look like you're putting air, that compressor, and
That's just the equipment.
25,000 seems pretty light.
The piping and all the infrastructure is included. This is simply just for the equipment.
So an air compressor and all the piping is in the building.
The air compressor we will provide, the piping is in part of the building. So the compressor is in this, the welding hood, and it really is welding hood, the dust collection, the air compressor are the big three components in that. Office furniture, we have about 15,000 plugged in for that. That's for modular furniture for the office, and then some tables and chairs, basically for the new spaces there. Employee lockers, so kind of an odd number, came straight from me, and so we're looking at that as probably like a polyethylene type of a locker system that can throw a lock on. Nothing super fancy, place to drop their stuff. And then some storage shelving, and this is just an allowance for into the supply room and then up on the mezzanine. So the total set aside for that is probably around $55,000 to $60,000 for things that we will just more or less furnish the building with. The exterior improvements, and this goes back into the general contractor scope, we have the civil is about $215,000, and what's included in that is removal of the old parking lot and installation of all of the site, basically everything except for the building. And what I did break down there is that south parking spaces is around $26,500 was the engineer's estimate. So if I wanted to kind of a rough idea of putting parking in over to the east side of the parking lot, that's probably going to be about, I guess it would be $20,000 to $25,000 for the additional spots over there. So that's kind of a rule of thumb. So the total for the exterior is around $240,000, which brings us to a grand total for all work of $1,293,228.41. Put some overhead and profit onto that at around 15%, which would be $193,984.28. And I recommend you hold around 15% contingency. The big question I see with this, most new buildings, I don't see a whole lot of contingency with the building. Probably the biggest question mark is if we run into unsuitable fill as we start to excavate. And actually, I'm going to make one change before we release this for bid and put in a unit price basically for haul off any sort of unsuitable fill and back that in at square yard cost. So we have that ready to go.
Yeah, I know in buildings in this area there have been issues with it. They've put a lot of pilings and stuff down. Do we know, what was our experience on the new jail? Was it similar?
The new jail over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did have some issues there and have had initially issues with it wanting to sink.
With what?
With it wanting to sink, but when that building was built, there was about 2 years from when we bid it, or when we budgeted for it to when it went out for bid, because of the homes that were along there that had to be, we went to court over some of those to take them down. Well, when the bids came in higher, they had to make some shortcuts, and some of the shortcuts affected the foundation of the building in the end. The homes that were along Fifth Street, when they were demolished, they were pushed into the foundation hole and filled with dirt, so I'm not sure what we'll find. What we'll find there, we do have an area in the parking lot that is sinking, and you can put like a 3-foot rod down in there and not really hit anything, so we have an issue there anyway that needs to be dealt with. So It's likely we'll have some extra work.
So your thoughts are, you know, what would be the solution, pilings or something?
Probably not that. What they would most likely do if they run into just soft spots is they would over excavate until they got to good virgin soil, come back in with an engineered or an improved fill, and then just put foundations on. So really it's going to be a matter of site preparation without doing, you know, one thought was we could do some geotech investigations and come and, you know, bore some wells, but with the nature of it, sounds like there were homes that were there previously that were just pushed back in. We could drill 4 wells and hit 4 good spots without necessarily going and finding the issues. So this, again, if they find it, think about typical is about 8 foot per foundation. That was probably on virgin soil. They're going to over excavate just in the area until they get to good soil, come back, put in some compacted fill, and then we just do the foundations as per normal.
We had to do that in an area where we put in the parking lot across from the courthouse. There was an area that was soft that they had to excavate out and fill it. So it wouldn't surprise me if we ran into a
Trying to think of the best way to capture that. I think doing a unit cost for that is probably the best way to go about it, and then understanding that it's likely we'll run into some of that with our contingency for the overall building. Otherwise, everything is, I feel very confident that we have beat this thing up pretty good. So everything is fairly well defined. It's a brand new building, so we know what's going into it, what's going on to it. So hopefully there won't be a lot of questions. I am incredibly impressed with the work of Axiom Consultants on this. They've been very thorough. It's a great team that I think you'll find that their work is very good. So what my recommendation then is for the county to have a project or an under expectation going into this, that the budget for the overall project could be up to $1,681,196.93. Sherry and I talked about that. It is more than what we had originally budgeted, but we also have expanded from about a 4,000 square foot building to about a 7,000 square foot building. We picked up some of the additional parking, so I think these are in line. Just for a rule of thumb, for a 7,000 square foot building, we're at about $172 a square foot just for the building, and then for the overall project with the building and the site work, we're just I think it's $205 a square foot or something like that, which seems to be fairly in line, a reasonable cost for. Again, we're not throwing up a pole barn. I've heard that word thrown out. This is not a pole barn. This is going to be a professional quality facility all the way through. Nothing the matter with pole barns. Put a time and place for everything.
Does that include the haul out cost that you had mentioned?
So yes, that would be in that contingency, that 15% contingency, anything that we needed to do there. So in an ideal world, we don't have to spend that because we excavate and everything's fine, and they didn't push any houses in over there. But you know, good money's on. We're going to find something. We just don't know where it is. Like, you know, I don't have a great way to quantify that, what that is up front. And what this does is by doing a unit cost, it gives you best advantage of if we don't find something, then the county doesn't have to spend those
And
dollars.
back to the site plan issue, I'm kind of, you know, one of the things I have learned, you know, so it looked like we have some underground sewer work to do to get laterals into us and stuff. And so what about all the fees and inspections that we have to pay for? Were we counting on our contractor to put those into his bid, and you've kind of got that incorporated into your numbers, or how do those flow through?
Yep, that's a great question. So that goes in a little bit of overhead and profit is a portion of that, and then the other part is general conditions. So we do have approximately $250,000 built into there for all of those types of things for fees, permits. But this is a turnkey project, so the contractor will be responsible for providing you with the building, everything inspected, including at the end of that, the city will come and look at, and obviously look at the parking spots and get those turned over. But that's all built into this total.
When you get a chance, I'm not asking you to do it cold today, but get us the information as to the cost of those Walnut Street parking spots.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to have a separate figure for that.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Mike, on your furnishings and equipment, you said that the maintenance hoist was something that we would be providing to them. Is that correct? Under your
Yeah,
55,000?
it's broken out into that line. Yep.
So are we also providing them with a welder, an air compressor, those items?
Everything that's under that furnishing and equipment are things that we would purchase directly to have installed in the building. So they're specified, and the connections and hookups are all in the contract or on the building. But the actual equipment themselves, that gives us the opportunity to go out and shop and find what we want directly.
So we're, when you're saying the maintenance hoist, that's what you're saying, we're gonna go out and buy them and it's not included in this budget, or it is in this
It
budget?
is included in that line. So then, if you look at the one page that I provided you, basically what we do is condense and give it a little more truncated. Again, want to make the contractors do a little bit of work when they're putting together their bids here, but give them, here's approximately what we think that we have coming out. So you can see general conditions remains the same, but one section that got pulled out of that was the furnishing and equipment. So that's money that would be in the county's budget overall, but not necessarily money that would be into the contract for construction, if that makes sense. So there will likely be costs that the county will have above and beyond the contract for construction, and that is all included into the 1.68 million figure. But when we let this contract for bid, what we're asking the general contractor to bring us is going to be, with everything in minus contingency, because that's your money, not theirs. We can break that down. Essentially, we go to the total cost of the work, add in a 15% contingency, and then their total opinion probable cost for that is $1,423,547.29. So it's all, at the end of the day, everything is built into the first spreadsheet. It's just when we let the contract, what's in the plans and specifications to the general contractors will be asking to bid, their scope of work is gonna be that $1.42 million.
But in their specifications, they know that they've gotta, like, they've gotta hook up an air compressor wired in. They've gotta they've gotta set and pipe out, fume hoods. Okay.
And just from what we looked at is the fume hood is a standalone, basically put it on the wall and plug it in, so it's a standalone unit, so there's not really piping with that, it's just more or less installation. And then for the dust collection, the same sort of situation, we're looking at a portable that can be basically moved from machine to machine versus investing in. There will certainly be a time and a place to do robust with the type of work that we're doing, it's just, people saw it, use it, roll it out, so we're gonna go with
Is any of that externally vented?
It's all, well, there will be separate ventilation from that space. The welding hood is a recirculating hood, so it has a filter set up, so we don't have to vent that externally.
And the dust collection would be internally contained, it does not, because you have to permit that stuff if you do.
It is all internally contained, so again, trying to keep this on the lowest level. This is,
Pump along the wall, we have to permit it, natural resources, construction permits, and I just want to make sure who's responsible for that.
absolutely. This is maintenance, not fabrication, so we're not, this is not a factory or any sort of fabrication on that level. So.
Mike, when we actually agree with the contractor, what kind of warranty would we have on some of this work? For example, one of the lines in the concrete breaks in the, underground. Do we have any sort of long-term contract that we would have with them in this?
So by Iowa statute, you have 12 months on any sort of anything. The contractor owns everything for 12 months, and then there are certain things that in the contract are made in general systems. So like the roof may come with a longer warranty. The siding will come with a longer warranty as installed. I don't know specifically about underground. My suspicion is that if you go beyond that and you can prove that it was somehow was negligent on the installation, you may have legal recourse, but 12 months is my understanding for Iowa statute and what the warranty period is.
So when we did that, the engineer has already looked at potential weights and loading, because I'm, as far as putting an underground heating system or an in-floor, I was just concerned if we ever brought in, let's say we do a maintenance truck or a bigger, maybe one of Keith's trucks or something to do any welding or anything like that, or a repair, would that be too much loading on something like that for those types of concrete? Those are the concerns that I'm thinking out just in my mind, is that, we're putting in a 6-inch concrete because it's gonna be more for loading, is it gonna be a 4-inch? And then you're basically putting in that in-floor heat, and then you're potentially putting it at risk of more. But that's just me thinking in as far as warranty type things.
Yeah, you can see that's what we're specing for our slab. So a 6-inch Portland concrete welded wire fabric, which is standard for more or less for shop. Some of the parking spaces are going to be a 7-inch Portland concrete. So yeah, I think we're well set. Now I can ask the question of, does this going to take a much larger vehicle and actually?
Well, and those are the things that I would say if there was ever, hey, don't bring in, a snow plow truck, or don't bring in, major things, because it's just, I don't know if those things are gonna be rated for
Wouldn't we
that.
just put in our equipment shed, 6-inch? Keith, he's been doing emails. What'd you put in your building, is 6-inch in a floor adequate for most of your type of equipment?
I'm thinking we put 8 in ours.
You put an 8?
Yeah, you see, probably, because
That's what
they're 30, 40,000 up.
Any expectation that they'd be pouring snow out into the maintenance building for work.
Right.
That'd be done out at your location, wouldn't it, always?
The heaviest thing you probably have, you have the little cut tractors, right, that the diversion crew works with, like the little, don't they have a little John Deere Kubota or something that they use? And I don't know what those weigh and what kind of load those would put. But typically 6-inch concrete.
Yeah,
or
well, the-
most, like forklifts,
that
solid
would-
wheel.
Talking about the John Deere tractor, the
Yeah.
lower tractor?
Yeah, it's just,
I
it's,
don't think it's probably heavy.
I would think 6-inch would be God's plenty in that building.
Yeah, as long as you're not bringing anything major, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
You're not putting heavy equipment in there, cats and things like that.
my last question, and this is just maybe from my inexperience of looking at this, I've never seen 15% twice. Basically, to me, it's kind of a contingency in the overhead and profit.
So the way that cost
I've never-
estimation works, the way that using the national cost estimation through RSME, is they have individual lines, and their recommendation is they'll have, basically for individual assemblies, they put in a certain cost, and that's how you get your unit cost. But at the end of that, it always recommends that you add an overhead and profit, because it wouldn't account for everything that's in, basically pulling together the entire system. So is there a little bit extra in there? Potentially. The contingency, again, that's not the contractor's money, that's yours.
I understand the
So-
contingency. It's just, to me, it's almost like a 30% contingency, I guess is the way I look at it when I see that in my mind.
The overhead and profit is different from contingency. That's basically what you're paying the general contractor for. So they're gonna come in, they're gonna do the overall supervision of the day-to-day work, just to, they've gotta pay their guys, they've gotta eat at the end of the day. So, that's fairly standard, 10 to 15%. And a project of this size, around 1.4, is a good sized project, but it's not necessarily a massive project.
Okay.
The request would be is that we would like to release this project for bid. So what we will ask is for the project we described here with the site plans, the full specification, which will be in 2 volumes, and it's about 600 pages, if anybody wants to read through the whole thing. I have, riveting, but basically release this project with the plans, the specifications, and the opinion of probable cost of $1,423,547.29, with the unit cost expectation for a square yard to basically remove, dispose of, and replace with acceptable fill areas that don't have, basically find not very.
and that would be an addition, that would, you didn't have any of that specified in a certain amount?
Without knowing
You
what's
just
in-
want a cost for doing it?
Yes, the way the unit
To
cost
some
works is
people
that
today.
we understand we have a cost up front already from them, so they have that built in, so we don't come back and say, hey, we ran into this. It makes them do the thinking beforehand. So it's something that we can't use as a discriminator. So remember, with the public bid, we will take the lowest responsive bid exclusive of alternates or unit costs. And then we can accept or reject any alternates that we want as we go through. But the unit cost is prepared, so if they come out and they start working on it, we know that, say, hey, we're gonna start taking this out, it's more or less we have already built in the expectations. They don't have to stop work, come and ask us, and then come back to get the unit cost taken care of.
All right, so I'd make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Jeff has moved to close the public hearing.
Second.
Santos has seconded. This is a roll call. Santos?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
I vote aye, Scott. Aye. And, aye. It's passed. We're now in line for, a possible motion to approve the resolution approving those plans, specifications, et cetera.
So moved.
Second.
Jeff has moved, Santos has seconded. Once again, it's a roll call vote. Doug? Aye. Scott? Aye. I vote aye. Jeff?
Aye.
And Santos. Motion is passed. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much, appreciate your time today, and we will get this going. So pre-bid walkthrough, just for timeline, will probably be next week. I gotta go back and look and see what I put together with bids due mid-September, so you'll see me back here towards, I think, September 19th to make a recommendation for the project.
Great.
Thank you very much, we have a great day.
Change order.
have the ever-patient Deputy Assessor Delane Clark here with items from the Assessor's Office.
Good morning.
Morning.
The first thing is on the agenda, let's see, is to discuss a possible action to disallow previously approved homestead credits. The assessor's office reviews the homestead credit and the military credit applications each year. We verify ownership and residency with existing application, and then we enter any new applications. Our recommendation is to approve the 2019 homestead and credit and military credit applications as presented to the board. If you have any questions.
No, I looked through them, so I'll make a motion, was on item A, the discussion, so I'll make a motion to approve the disallowed homestead credits.
So on 6A,
I'll second that.
Jeff has moved, Santos is second approval on 6A. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
It is approved.
Thank you. The next one is, we had two applications for the 2019 that we're recommending to the board to disallow. The first one was one of our former assessor deputies, when doing sales check, she said the sister stated that Mr. Dorst does not reside at this property. The code states that we're not to deny people or individuals to sign up for the application. We just recommend to the board to disallow, so that's why we're having these two. The second one is Mr. Kruger for his military. He only served 6 years in the National Guard and was not called up for active duty, so he did not meet the qualifications for the military credit. And so that's the second part. So we're recommending to the board to disallow these two applications that were applied for in 2019, excuse me. Do you have any questions on those two?
I'll make a motion to disallow those as in 6B.
Santos has moved,
I will second.
Scott has seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And 6C.
Okay, in the first part of July, we came in for the 2018 Disabled Veterans Homestead Credit. Well, we're doing the 2019 this time. The reason why we're doing it is it gives a better idea for the auditor's office of who's applied for disabled veterans. We have 8 applications that we need approved by the board. Do you have any questions on those?
No, I'll move their approval.
Jeff has moved their approval.
Second.
Scott has seconded.
So I just had one question, just, so
I
you,
see 9, but
I see 9.
Oh, 9? Did I count wrong? I've had a rough day, so.
it's Monday.
It's been a rough week. 9? Oh, I apologize.
so just like you did on the disallowed,
6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, yes, 9. Thank you, Leslie.
Delaney, just like as you did on the ones previously, you've already gone and verified all of their information and that they're living there and all of.
Well, when they apply, they state that they are residing at that place.
Okay.
And then next year, I go through all of the military, the disabled military, and verify that they're still there. If they are not, then I'll come back to the board, and
Okay.
if they hadn't sold the place, I'll come back and state that, have it disallowed.
Okay. That's all I had.
Do
Thank
these
you.
folks have to get, is it a DD 12 or 216? I can never remember. Do they
It's-
have one on file?
They don't have to have the DD 214 on
214,
file.
that's what it is.
But they do have to have it, well, we have to see it for one thing, but they have to show benefits, a benefits letter, and that has to be less than a year old. If it's a widow, then she has to prove that she is getting dependency, it's DIC, but I can't remember what it's called. She has to show that she is getting benefits from her husband, well, she's a widow, so.
Sure, so it's not just someone says, hey, I qualify, and they.
No, they have to prove that they would qualify for this.
Do we have a motion to approve?
You got a motion from,
You have a-
there to do it?
You have a motion and a second.
All right, great, we do have a motion and a second. Well, all those who would like to approve the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I had one last question. Do they have to be 50% disabled or 100% disabled?
100% disabled or unemployable. There's three, unemployable, disabled, and then there's one where if you lost a limb or an eye when you were active duty. So there's three parts of the application, on the application that they would have to.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the August 12th, 2019 regular meeting. It has been moved
Second.
by Scott and seconded by Jeff. All those in favor?
All right.
All right, moving right along to correspondence. Let's mix it up. Doug, let's start on your side.
I had no correspondence. I had no correspondence.
I do not believe I have any direct correspondence other than stuff that was came to us from a homeowner that Keith had dealt with. I think we might have all received that. And then there was something that Sanos had forwarded to us, but I'll let Sanos talk about that. Jeff?
I have nothing to add.
On Friday, I had a invitation by the Quad City group in regards from elected officials going to a CASA event, which I had never been to, for foster care programs that they're trying to do to raise funds. Got a chance to sit through that, and it's a very good program. I also got an email in regards to questions in regards to the county needing to see if we're ever looking at or still having any information in regards to recycling. I had replied to the email, copied you guys in, saying that we do have that on our agenda. We're probably going to be a couple weeks out before we still get quotes, and we're still in discussions and trying to follow up on that. So I'd like to see if Nancy can probably put that out a couple weeks out, as far as once we start getting some numbers that we can at least discuss and have that on the agenda. Another item that I got was an email in regards to maintenance on a trail that was out over by Lutheran Homes, and I copied in Keith in regards to that, and it was something that I'd like to see if we can discuss at some time in the future in regards to, you know, when we start having these trails expand into the county, who really is responsible for the ownership of those, who's responsible for the maintenance of those items, because if we're not taking ownership, or if there's no sharing of funds or costs associated to those, then are we just basically stuck holding that? And I'd like to see if it's something in the next couple of weeks, if we can put that on the agenda to have a discussion, either with, you know, Kurt, in regards to saying if the conservation's responsible for that. I know we're doing another expansion coming down from the park, going down to the new trail that we're just going down through Hauser. So I'd like to see where those discussions are with the city, and I'd like to see if we can have that on the agenda in the future once we have a conversation with Kurt in
I
regards to
think
that.
that was a question. I don't really, I mean, this is an open discussion, is, you know, Keith, on a trail that goes like in county right of ways, do we have any responsibility, ownership to those long term, or do you know how those happen?
Normally, they're built with grant money.
Yeah.
Normally, somebody signs an agreement that they're going to maintain that. Okay? Particular piece we're talking about, that never happened. I can tell you every trail out in the county, they're conservation, they're not roads. So road department's never taken ownership of a trail.
So I think it's something that I'd like to discuss, and at least we can start maybe getting a map of what's out there. And so we can start saying, okay, this we do own, this we are responsible for, or this is what we do have set dollars for in 2020 or 2021's budget, as we start making sure that we maintain.
Well,
that if
I
there's
would
anything.
think that, you know, we have a, I would say there are a few issues boiling around the county around things per allowed in rights of way that you know, I think we should have some kind of a policy towards, you know, and I don't really care who's building. If somebody's building a trail in our right of way, I think you won't, well, you know, like in this particular case, you know, there's only one way I would ever consider us accepting them is if our engineer agreed to the design and the terms and all of that, because, you know, I don't want somebody just to go pave a cow path, so to speak, and then say, you guys are responsible for this long term. It doesn't make sense.
So, again, that's why I'd like to see if we could have a discussion on it. As
Because
far
I don't
as
know that we do,
future-wise.
because I think we
Yeah.
have had other things that have gone into the right of way, and I don't know that if the board, you know, has it, you know, how to get, what's the agreements on that? You know, I know we have people, we're doing utility permits all of the time, and that's okay, right? I mean, there's a process for that, and I don't think is a part of that process, keeping a utility permit, the county's taking no ownership of the things under there, is that correct?
That's correct.
That's clearly stated, the utility permit. Yeah, because I think it's a great discussion, because I think, didn't we have something earlier this year around somebody wanting to put some kind of tower in the right of way as well? So I think I think it would be really good that we have that discussion and have some kind of a policy on that.
Yes, I agree. That's all I have for correspondence.
How about committees?
No committees.
Jeff?
Nothing last week.
I did not. Scott?
I had nothing last week, either.
Amanda?
Well, I got 2 weeks because I wasn't here last week.
All right.
Monday, August 5th was special fair board meeting. Wednesday, August 7th, safety committee, 3 o'clock. And Friday, August 9th, we had another special meeting for hiring fair board manager, and they have hired one.
Okay.
Chelsea Morris. Our August 10th race was a pretty good race. We had a decent attendance for that. We have one August 24th this coming Saturday, which is the Deary Brothers Late Model Series. So we're expecting a full house. We're advertising on KWBC, Vintage Sound, twice a day on both stations at different segments, and giving away some free tickets. So listen to me, you get free tickets. That's all.
Alrighty, moving right along to item number 10, receive information from county employees. Keith, you'd be the only one that qualifies. County Engineer Keith White.
Good morning. I'll just follow up, what Santos had reported on the trails thing, and I had an email from the city manager. There is an issue with the trail down there by Lutheran Homes, so I'm probably going to respond that we're gonna be discussing our position on trails. That's the piece that got built, and the bridge got lengthened, and the piece on Hershey and the piece out into the county there. And the hill's sliding down and the trail's buckled, so. The obvious question is who's going to maintain it?
Yeah, and you know, being a person that drives by that trail off work, it's a trail that comes from nowhere and goes nowhere. And I just wanted to, you know, how did that even get built, do we know?
We do know, yes.
That was a DOT project, correct?
Well, yeah, but there was some, not the county doing, there was not the county doing at all. There was some trails money left over, and that's where it got spent.
Region 9 trails, money?
It might have even been set aside, like federal set aside.
Okay. Okay.
Trails people would have to answer that for sure.
That's where every time it rains, the mud comes down.
Yeah,
Covers the trail.
Yeah, the hill's slacking.
and the last time I came down, I
Telegraph.
came under it as well as over it, so it's buckled pretty huge.
Only about 2.5 feet, wouldn't be.
Yeah,
You could practice this year, what do they call those, telodromes? Where you ride your bike around on the edge? You could practice that on that section of trail now.
Moving forward.
Whoops.
Anything else, Keith?
yeah, so quick report on the design side. as the DOT moves more and more into electronic submittal of things, we always submit with every project a project development certificate. And now they want, when we send it in, they want to know who's going to be signing contracts for the county, what their title is, what their contact information is. Right now, that would be the chairperson. And we're about to send a number of projects in, but they're not gonna get well, they might get let this year, but they're not gonna be contracts signed more than likely until next year, when that will be more than likely somebody else as chair. So hopefully the DOT can figure that out, that asking for that at this point is not real sensible. So Nathan will probably be getting emails on projects and not hitting delete, hopefully, and hopefully sending them to the next chair if he's not doing it again. So to that end, on the design side, with G28, we're looking at a November, December letting. We're basically handling Bridgestone Bandag, saying if we don't hear back from them, we're going to consider their water main abandoned and treat it as such if we encounter it, so that can move forward. I mentioned only a couple earlier, but on the historic bridge project 163, and we signed the last piece of right-of-way acquisition today, but AT&T had a fiber beyond the right-of-way line on a private easement, which we typically have some temporary easements beyond that. So we were wanting to deal with that and wanting them to lower their fiber in case, just in case, and so to lower 65 feet, they needed $33,000. So we have since modified the plans that we don't have to bother them. It's not a huge.
You were asking them to lower 65 linear feet?
Yeah, $507 a foot.
Were they taking it to China?
Well, if you read their email, I think they've covered every possible contingency, because even to cut and splice a fiber like that's about 10 grand, so you'd have to break it and keep it out of service a long time, I think, so multiple times. So, but we worked around that. But you know, utilities have been a challenge, but that should be a project development certificate going in on that today. And seemed like I had one more. I guess I'm just thinking of the project down on G28 where it's both federal and farm to market. That's kind of it. What's new in the design world. On the construction side, Iowa has put the surface course on about a third of Kelly so far, and we're guessing they'll finish up Kelly this week, paving and shouldering. Manats, I reported last week that the seal coating and reclamation was complete. 155th Street Bridge, Iowa Bridge and Culvert plans to start August 26th. It's a week from today. We had a pre-con last week, and a pre-con meaning a pre-construction meeting. And the North Isaac Bridge, which is Macaulay Culvert, they're supposed to start, or planning to start either tomorrow or Wednesday. And we sent a letter to the property owners a week ago Wednesday. And the Iron City grading project is complete, roads open, looks pretty good. Pretty good job by Peterson Construction out there. And the other item I had is we will in the next week or two be bringing some major purchases to you on motor graders and a loader. We are budgeted for motor grader deliveries are 6 months out. Although our experience has been they probably don't make it here in 6 months, it takes longer. So we had one budgeted for this year. We have 2 machines that in August of next year, August 2020, reach the limit on their buyback agreements. The buybacks are currently higher than what they will offer us. So we would like to take advantage of those buybacks. So we will be proposing to purchase one in this fiscal year and then one for the next fiscal year, which we've not yet budgeted, and aim for deliveries by the end, one by the end of this fiscal year, one in the next fiscal year. And we also will avoid, multiple price increases if we act on that. But I'll be bringing information to you on that. And I guess I should follow up as I think Nathan reported, I've had multiple I think I had 21 emails was my count in about 3 weeks on 152nd. So Miss Gearing swears up and down that a motor grader was sitting at the end of the road, and it simply was not. And probably stopped including all of you and even Santos on what I had written to Santos about the GPS data. It shows the time, it shows the speed, and you could
Location.
turn it off, but it wasn't off, or it could not work, but it was working, and it shows his complete trail. And I guess Polly followed up with, well, we were wasting taxpayer money prepping dust controls, which has been done time eternal here for decades. And I suggested she contact you and tell you that she doesn't want dust controls. And then she suggested that I should be on their road every single day, which this past week I pretty much was with FEMA, which I told her that. I didn't find the road too bad. I also told her, well, I did have numerous residents speak to us down there when FEMA was there with, what are you doing? And the FEMA people basically asked them, what are you doing? Not me, FEMA people. But we explained to them that we were looking at what FEMA might approve for improvement to the road for replacement. And I will tell you all that FEMA heard it out of me multiple times that, I pay local taxes, state taxes, and federal taxes. I don't like spending dollars that are just a waste of money. I don't care whose pocket it's coming out of. So I'm just not sure we should be spending tens of thousands of federal dollars down there either. And that's just the facts, so.
Keith, I want to thank you for the patience you've displayed in responding to that situation. What I've seen, I've taken the time to review the GPS data as well. We've got full confidence in you, I think, and appreciate the work. I mean, we're already spending, it's a challenging stretch of road, but we spend between 50 and 100% more on that stretch of road than the average piece of road in the county. It's just a challenging environment, and you could be laying down. You could have someone there every day, and it still wouldn't be perfect.
Yeah.
So thank you for your work and your patience.
I do not know when we'll have FEMA's response on this and the other sites we looked at. At the rate they're moving, and they've got a lot to do. I would think a month might be wishful thinking. When they come out, we had all these entities at one meeting, and then when they came out, and I just, Eric, I said, who happened to pass by, I said, did you notice that every single person is different? So, like if I deal with the auditor one day, the next day they come, it's a different auditor. I mean, we've got several parts of the world and many states represented, and so when the Iowa folks said that female numbers of 10-1, they're not kidding, and it's a little bit. I would say the questions we get asked on the paper, we've filled out probably about 4 times now. And every time they come out, they go through the whole checklist again. We've done it online, so it doesn't get the dollars to fix things there really right away, and you sit and wait otherwise. And I will tell you on 150. I'm going to tell you on 152nd, because we went clear to the far end. That's where we stopped. And the team leader, the FEMA people, said, "Well, I don't see anything wrong with this road." Which actually, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. As we turn around and drive back, we're going to stop at every spot, look at the rock washed off the ditch." And then he said, "Well, I didn't mean to make you mad, but I'm just telling you that was their opinion, though." And this is the road that's a source of constant complaints, but they didn't see much wrong with it. And my answer was, well, we have to make the thing serviceable for the folks that live back there. So anyway, enough on FEMA. That's all I have. Barring any questions.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it. Last but not least, items of the administration office. Item 11A is action to confirm the acceptance of a fiscal year 1920 Iowa Grants to Counties program contract between the Iowa Department of Public Health and the Muscatine County Board of Health for well testing, well plugging, and well reconstruction activities in the amount of $30,927.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second it.
Jeff has moved, Santos has seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And motion is approved. Item B is action to affirm the acceptance of an FY 1920 Chronic Disease Prevention Grant contract between the Iowa Department of Public Health and the Muscatine County Board of Health for intervention implementation to target populations in the amount of $9,900.
Second.
Scott has moved, Jeff has seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item 11C is to review the health and dental fund balance as of June 30th, 2019. Nancy, any commentary there?
Just the spreadsheet was in your packet. We're more or less holding our own in terms of fund balance, so.
Slight drop, not significant, still a healthy balance. We should be in pretty good shape.
All right, anything else with the administration, Nancy?
I do not have anything else, other than to let you know the state auditors are supposed to be here.
They're here.
Okay, they're here as of today. Their plan is to only be here for 1 week, so I guess we'll see how that goes.
I think also this is Felicia Toppert's first day, is it not?
Yes, it is.
So just recognize Felicia Toppert beginning as our new Director of Community Services today. Maybe when she, wouldn't want to do this to her first day or so, but maybe when she gets a chance, she could come in and say hi to all of us. That'd be great. Anybody else? All right, folks, Keith, yes. Under the gun.
Yes. Very quickly, to set the record straight, to answer Jeff's question, 6 inches. I texted Dennis, he looked it up, 6-inch floor.
Okay. Good.
All right.
Thank you, Keith.
Here, we are adjourned.